Anyway, my name is Gaiman Yi. I'm the Technical Director of the i4energy Center. Welcome everyone to today's seminar. Also, a welcome to those that are viewing the seminar on the internet. Today's speaker is Barbara Heydorn. She is the Director of Center of Excellence in Energy at SRI International. Her focus at SRI is to link R&D capabilities from throughout SRI to business opportunities in the energy arena. She provides perspective on industry needs in the energy arena, shaping SRI's strategy for addressing those needs. She also identifies client project leads, puts together the teams to respond to those leads, and represents SRI's capabilities to potential partners and funding organizations. Barbara holds a BS in chemistry from the University of Redlands and an MBA from Santa Clara University. Let's welcome Barbara.
Well, thank you very much. It's really a pleasure to be here today. I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you. I listened to last week's presentation because I wasn't familiar with the organization, and this one will be sort of similar to that in the sense that it won't be a deep dive technical talk, but it'll be an overview of the kinds of work that we're doing at SRI and in the energy arena. So specifically, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with my organization, so I thought I'd give you a little bit of an overview on what we do, talk about why energy is a priority for us, give you a sampling of some of the projects that we're working on, and then talk a tiny bit about our innovation practices. So we're a not-for-profit R&D organization. We were established in 1946 by Stanford University. We became independent from the university in 1970. We've got about 2,000 staff members at our 20 worldwide offices. Most of our work is really research and development. We're approaching $500 million in revenue. And these are a few of the locations where we're active. I thought I'd give you a sense of our charter because I think it's really fascinating. We were founded to be committed to the discovery and application of science, technology for knowledge, commerce, prosperity, and peace. So that's a pretty open, fertile field for us to work in. In terms of how we've deployed that into things that people here might recognize, this is sort of a timeline that I can walk you through of some of the innovations that have come out of SRI. One of the implications of being a not-for-profit is that we don't actually manufacture commercial quantities of things. So if we want our technology to be used in everyday items that people are make an impact on people's lives, we would tend to license the technology to another company or spin out a company to actually establish a new venture. So a few of the things that were credited that we developed would be some of these characters here on automated checks. So that you can actually, there's a magnetic ink in there, so it can be read by the machine or by eyes. People here might not even be using checks very much these days, but I'm sure you're using other innovations that have come out of SRI, which would include the computer mouse. And then we've done quite a bit of work. We actually received the first message on the ARPANET, which was a precursor to the internet. And what you see here was an example of wireless networking. And if you think about it, it's sort of like the first example of a portable computer with wireless internet access. Our innovations span a variety of industries. We also do quite a bit in the health arena. We're responsible for some of the early developments in ultrasound. The center is a robotic surgery device. Artificial muscle, I'll tell you a little bit more about later in the context of energy. Our natural language platform, thank us or not, but that's a lot of what is behind things like being able to do stock trades by voice, do your airline reservations by voice, and not having to have personal, real human operators for some simple all of those transactions. I'll be telling you more about our databases, genomic databases and tools a little bit later, again in an energy context. And then some of our more recent activity has been in the field of decision support software. So really making software tools more your personal assistant and flexible in terms of understanding and interpreting your needs instead of us having to conform to a set of protocols around software. Again, in order to get our innovations to market, we have to license or spin out the technology. A couple of success stories would be things like Intuitive Surgical. If you remember that robotic surgery device, some of that technology has been incorporated into the Da Vinci surgical platform, which is used today in a variety of surgeries. Nuance is where much of our speech recognition software went to. And one of our recent success stories is a company called Siri, which is a personal assistant. You can actually download this application from the internet for your iPhone, and it will help you, it helps make the internet a more useful, it's a more useful mechanism, I guess, for interacting with the internet. And that was recently acquired by Apple. In terms of how we fit in the R&D spectrum, we like to think of bridging the gap between fundamental science, which is really is primarily the domain of universities and national labs. And at the other end of the spectrum would be industry, corporations that are really production-oriented. We span that gap, and our forte is really in the applied research area, and even to some extent in product development as we help companies scale up their ideas. So why is energy a priority at SRI? Well, remember that card I showed you? This is actually, by the way, something our CEO hands out to every new employee. He likes to emphasize that, as technologists, it's so easy to get involved in interesting work, but what we want to do is important work. So we solve important problems. And nothing is more important than energy. Think about it. We use it for growing our food, for cleaning and delivering our water, for helping maintain our comfortable homes and offices, running our factories and businesses, for transportation, communications, entertainment. And what we need is energy that's affordable, that's clean, and dependable. It helps us address our standard of living. It helps lift people out of poverty. It helps reduce and prevent disease because we can deliver clean water. It gives us options on where we live, when we work. And these are all just tremendously important to the lifeblood of our economy. And finally, because energy is so important, having secure access to the energy supplies you need is very important as well. And having that security can actually reduce the threat of terrorism. So energy is very important. One of the questions that I get a lot is, well, we know there's some problems in the energy arena, especially when we think about petroleum, which supplies so much of our fuel needs. And it's interesting because this was actually even recognized back in the 50s when Eisenhower recognized, as we were approaching needing 20% of our petroleum supplies to come from imported sources, that represented a national security risk. And today, it's closer to 60%. So I get a lot of questions on what should we be doing in terms of alternatives. And so I thought I'd do a little experiment with you guys in terms of thinking about what options are out there. And one of the questions I get asked all the time is, what's the best alternative, Barb? Where should we be putting all of our money? So I said, well, I know what everybody wants. We want something that's sustainable, that never runs out. We want to move away from these hydrocarbons that we've been relying on for so many years, but that are a fixed quantity in the world. We want things that consumers will use if we give it to them. And we want it available pretty much right away without having to put any new infrastructure in, at a price that we can afford, and where we have some local controls so we can protect the price and keep that stable. We don't want any environmental footprint either. We don't want emissions. We don't want land use issues. We don't want to use any scarce resources like water that might be associated with some of that energy use. So come on, scientists, let's invent the perfect solution. So here's where the experiment is. I was thinking maybe, even in this room, if we could come up with some agreement on where today's how today's energy options fit, and if we can think about some of the questions that we ask as we think about alternatives. So I took kind of the first crack on gasoline, because we all use it. So does anybody here think that gasoline is the perfect fuel? Okay, that's a no. But for those out on the internet. So we know, for example, if we're looking at sustainability, never runs out. Well, it comes from petroleum. It's a hydrocarbon. That's a fixed resource. I'm going to give it, we're doing subjective ratings here, red, green, yellow. I'm going to give it a red. No. Acceptance. Will consumers use it? Well, absolutely. Technology readiness? Yep, it's here. price. Well, we could get some discussion on this point, I'm sure, because we've seen a lot of variability. But I'm going to argue that it's priced low enough because we haven't done anything about moving away from it. Available, dependable, local control, stable prices. Well, we're a little bit vulnerable here. 97% of our petroleum supplies, or excuse me, our transportation fuels come from petroleum, and 50 or 60% of that is imported. So we're vulnerable there. And how about the environmental footprint? Yeah, thumbs down. Thanks. So why don't we think about an alternative? What could we propose? And since this is preloaded, I only give you one choice, and that's ethanol. We'll go through that one. But I want to get a feeling from folks on sustainability. Okay, we've got a thumbs down. Comes from biomass. Is anybody going to give it a thumbs up? No? Okay. Well, the fact that it came from biomass drove a lot of the initial interest in it, because if you're thinking about that it's certainly a renewable resource. So I rated it on the sustainability focus green from you can always grow more biomass. I think some people might include environmental footprint in their sustainability rating, and it would probably get a yellow or a red there. But again, this kind of brings up the point that for all of these things, some of the analysis tools that you would use are subjective. And actually, maybe I'll ask the person who put the thumbs down as to why you would argue it's not sustainable.
So ethanol has the property of you're going to degrade the land.
Right. Right.
So you could say it'll never run out, but in order to get ethanol for the entire Earth, we have to use 1/6 of the crop life of the entire planet.
So it's really important how you define the problem before you frame the debate, right? Because if I include land use in there, you're absolutely right. There's a problem. Consumer acceptance. I went ahead and put down yes, but this is another one I suspect we could get some disagreement on, because some people aren't interested in putting it in their cars and have attached some automotive problems to it, although I think all of those are probably technology issues we could work around. How about technology readiness, available today? I gave it kind of a mix. We need certainly more infrastructure in order to deliver it to markets. Price, gets some price supports, so it's certainly not competitive with gasoline yet. Local control, stable prices. Well, we have some local control, so maybe that's okay. Environmental footprint, I've seen studies all over the map on yes versus no, and I gave that it's difficult to tell. And you'll come up with similar issues whether you're looking at natural gas, whether you're looking at hydrogen, whether you're looking at electric vehicles. And what I want to illustrate here is just that there's a lot of things that we don't know yet, and basically none of these are going to come up green on every vector. And so at some point you need to be shifting the debate from what is the best solution and thinking that you'll come up with a particular solution to thinking about, well, how do you weight some of these things that are important to us as a society? How important is this available and secure relative to sustainable or the environmental footprint or the price? Because you might not be able to optimize on all of these things. And as somebody is looking at the public debate, I think sometimes it's frustrating when you choose one choice because it's good on this vector, but then criticize it because it's not good on another. And sometimes what you need to be thinking about is a portfolio of options that you can be looking at to address your problems. And basically, thinking about all of these issues sort of reminds me of part of why I'm here and happy to talk to students, because we really need a lot of thought put into this issue. We have enormous energy supplies today, and they are growing. It's only going to get to be a more critical problem as we think about where we want our future supplies to come from. So we need some informed decision makers who've made learning about energy a priority for them. We need systems level thinkers, because as was pointed out, you can look at a tiny piece of the problem and think you have a great solution. We can grow all the crops we need, therefore biomass is sustainable. Oh, but wait a minute, it has a very negative impact on land use in total. Maybe it's not. So we need to think about the system as a whole. We also need to take into account a long-range view. Time is very important in how you evaluate some of these. The price today is not the same as the price 5 years from now or 10 years from now. But if you want to be ready with an option, you have to often start the investment and thinking about that many years ahead. And finally, you do need options. And that's an area that we're very excited about as technology developers. But before going into all of the detail on what we're doing, I just wanted to give a quick sense of why we think the energy issue is so important. Today we live primarily off of resources that were created many years ago. So about 85% of our energy supplies on a global basis are coming from things like oil and coal and natural gas. We've got some things that from renewables, hydroelectric and biomass. This is primarily, I think, biomass that's burned. Geothermal, but when you think about some of the technologies that are getting so much attention today, and they deserve it because they have a lot of promise and potential, but wind, photovoltaics, solar thermal, they are barely a blip on the global energy needs. And we need a lot of energy. As we think about it, even if we could assume that as a country we're going to really take these energy efficiency efforts seriously, make a lot of progress, it's going to be difficult to actually reduce our energy consumption. And we've got regions of the world that are far below what we might expect for developed economies. Because in fact, although there are many factors that drive energy consumption, affluence is one of them. And so if you look at this chart, you see on the x-axis the population, and on the y, per capita energy consumption. You can see that regions like North America have a relatively small proportion of the world's population, less than 10%, but a very large portion of the world's energy consumption, closer to 25%. And at the other extreme, you see regions like the Asia-Pacific, which includes countries like China and India, that have about 60% of the world's population, but account for just 30% of the energy consumption. And as these countries develop their economies and grow their populations, they're going to start approaching the world average. And that's going to be a huge impact on the amount of energy that the world needs. And why should they just stop at average? Why wouldn't they want something closer to what a developed economy typically uses? That might put them up somewhere around here. Where are we going to find all the energy that we need to supply that demand? And here's where it gets kind of fun. A colleague of mine just published a book this year called A Cubic Mile of Oil. And it's kind of an interesting little image because today you can think about world consumption in cubic miles of oil, and we use about 3 of them. And roughly a third of that, 1 cubic mile of oil, comes from petroleum. And there's a lot of attention right now with people who would really love to replace that consumption that we currently derive from petroleum with renewables. But the scale of doing that is so enormous. This cubic mile, it's a massive unit. It would put Manhattan under 150 feet of oil. And it's just very difficult to replace it. And even if we had time on our side, say 50 years, if we wanted to think about replacing that cubic mile of oil, what kind of investment would we need to be making now and every year for the next 50 years? Well, if you were building, say, a dam, something sort of along the size of the Three Gorges Dam in China, you'd need to do about 4 a year for the next 50 years. Some people would count nuclear as a clean fuel option, and if you want to have that cubic mile of oil come from nuclear, you've got to start building about 52 of those per year for the next 50 years. That's about 1 a week. I mean, in this country, the permitting process, you're never going to get there. Similarly, solar. Now, all of these assumptions, are based on, how big is the unit, how often does it run. But if you're looking at, say, a 2-kilowatt rooftop solar unit, you'd need like 91 million of these a year going in per year for the next 50 years. Similarly for wind, it's a lot of turbines. It's just a lot of energy. Now, we don't have to build just one type of energy, develop one type of energy resource, but we do need to be aware of the scale that any resource needs to be developed at and how long it's going to take to reach that cubic mile of oil that we're looking for. And in fact, as we look at future demand, we're likely to need a lot more oil. So if energy. So if today's energy consumption is around 3 cubic miles of oil, looking out towards 2050, there's a lot of discussion around exactly where we'll fit on this scale. But, kind of business as usual would put us around here. Some, heroic efforts at energy conservation, sure, you can reduce it. But it's going to be a challenge. And we should be getting prepared now. So big challenge, that's a big opportunity. And there's a lot of opportunities for everyone. And that's something that I'd really like to emphasize here. Sure, there's a huge need for new technologies. We need clean fuels, we need clean electricity, we need energy storage advances. Things in areas like advanced materials. If you can make things lighter and stronger, maybe you need less energy to drive them around, and so you can achieve some efficiencies there. Sensors, analytics, visualization tools, especially as we move to a smart grid and incorporate more information management into our energy systems. But we can't forget other things that are very important too. So education and training, making sure that we have students who are interested in the science, technology, engineering, mathematics, or STEM curriculum subjects. And finally, policy. I don't know if any of you got to hear Thomas Friedman when he was at Stanford not too long ago, but he had this great analogy. He said, yeah, our energy policy, we go out and mandate that car companies build a lot of fuel-efficient cars, and then we keep the price of oil really low. That's like trying to cure our obesity epidemic by telling shirt manufacturers they can only make size small. It's not going to work. So I thought I'd give you a quick sampling of some of the things that we're working on at SRI. So among those 2,000 or so employees that we have, there's quite a long list of core capabilities that are represented. And I'm not going to go through them all here, but really our forte is around identifying a market need, finding the team that can address that, putting together a program to look at an important industry need, something like portable power or better fuels or making our infrastructure more reliable, and coming up with a solution that we bring to market. So these are some examples of projects that we're working on. And I thought I'd start with one actually in the hydrocarbon arena, because I don't think we're going to be able to eliminate our dependence on hydrocarbons anytime soon. And so we should be thinking about how can we use them more effectively? How can we deploy them to better purposes? How can we use them more efficiently? How can we reduce the environmental footprint that's associated with them? And so some of the work that we do is actually on enhanced coal utilization. People come to SRI for a variety of reasons, and they can include unique equipment that we have, unique IP that we have, unique skills that we have. And all of those are a little bit at play here. But one of the unique pieces of equipment that we have is this radiant coal flow reactor, which can help understand the chemistry and kinetics of combustion at a very fundamental level. And with that information, we can model systems and design more energy efficient systems. We're working right now on a very novel gasification approach and combining that with some other twists and tricks to look into, is there a way to make JP8 from coal? JP8 is a grade of jet fuel that's commonly used by the military. And right now, obviously, most jet fuel comes from petroleum. We would love to be able to be independent. Many countries have coal, including the US, vast resources. And so if we could move to an economical process that made JP8 from coal, wouldn't that be exciting? Well, most processes also involve a lot of CO2 production and or a lot of water consumption. And so we think we've got an idea that's going to work around some of those factors and hopefully at a competitive cost as well. So that would be an example of something that we're doing to look at how to use today's technologies more effectively. The previous project looks at a fuel issue, but we also know that electricity is something important in terms of our energy infrastructure. And carbon capture is something that a lot of organizations are working on. We've got about half a dozen projects that are going on at SRI looking at all different types of solutions. So if we want to apply carbon capture to today's plants, typically that would be considered a post-combustion application where you actually burn your coal, recover post-combustion the CO2. But some of the next generation technologies that are being developed, you want to recover your CO2 in what's called a pre-combustion process. So we're looking at both of those angles. We are looking at a number of different separation techniques to separate the CO2 from the mixed gas stream, including membranes, solid sorbents, and liquid sorbents. And then we're also working on a very interesting project here on a pilot plant that we just built that is looking at a way to capture carbon dioxide from air. And this is interesting because it separates where your carbon capture is done from where you actually, or excuse me, where your carbon is produced from where you might want to use it. So that might open up some interesting alternatives in addressing this global challenge. What's also interesting about our work here, SRI as a whole, 80–90% of our work is actually under competitively won government contracts. But in the energy sector, about half of our work is actually done under commercial contracts. And some of the project work that's being done here, it's actually a mix of work that's funded by private companies and the Department of Energy. But we're definitely hoping to have some solutions ready for companies. And we did some of the early work on a process that's actually being implemented now at the Mountaineer Carbon Capture Sequestration project. So now moving into things that are a little bit farther out there and maybe more interesting because they represent new alternatives that are away from the hydrocarbon sources that I've been talking about. One of the innovations that you saw in our innovation timeline was something called an electroactive polymer artificial muscle, or EPAM. And this is actually work that was done for completely unrelated, not a non-energy application. This polymer, if you apply voltage to it, it will contract or expand. And the initial work was actually done around the concept of an artificial muscle and thinking about giving more lifelike movement to robotics. But the fact is the reverse reaction is of interest too, in that you stretch this polymer. If you have motion, you can actually generate electricity. So one of the first things that people thought about was, that's a great energy harvesting application. Maybe we can actually put it in the boot of the soldier. Think about all the electronics that they have to carry around with them and harvest that energy. It works. It doesn't quite fit the DoD requirements, so we're not commercializing that. But another application that we looked at is wave energy. And here we've had some interest from a company that has worked with us to scale this up into a prototype. And what you see in the right-hand corner there is a buoy that has our EPAM in here. And the rocking motion, or the up and down from the waves, expands and contracts that polymer to generate electricity to light a light on that buoy. The examples that I've given you so far have really emphasized skills like chemistry and engineering. And I want to be clear that, again, there's room for everybody at this party to address our energy challenges. And some of the work that we're doing here in our bioinformatics program actually relies on the expertise of biology and biologists, but also computer scientists. So this whole field of bioinformatics is about taking all the advances in information management and visualization and applying that to the field of biology. So we have several databases that keep track of the genomes of different organisms. And we've developed some software tools so that you can extract information from those databases. So you can get pictures of things like what genes regulate other genes, or where in an organism do specific metabolic processes occur, and can I compare that maybe to another organism and find out what metabolic processes occur there. So a lot of this work has traditionally been used to develop new drugs or effective antimicrobials or things in the biosciences. And we are just now starting to add a number of bioenergy pathways to our databases and toolkit. And we're very excited about this. So things about lignocellulose degrading enzymes, things related to hydrogen production, and also algal oil production. And just note that these tools are freely available to the academic community. So if you think it's something that would be useful to your interests, check it out. If we transition to new fuels, fuel safety is also a big issue. So we've done quite a bit of work over the years. We did work back when we were looking at installing the pipelines that bring natural gas from Canada into the U.S. And similarly, we're doing work now with hydrogen. How do we design structures and buildings so that they're safe? How do you design a garage so that if there's appropriate ventilation in case there's a leak of a hydrogen fuel cell powered vehicle in there? What happens if two hydrogen fueled cars collide in a tunnel? How high do your barrier walls need to be if you are trying to protect against an event? So this is interesting work, and I'm just going to show this to you for fun, but if it works. Oh, it's not linked up. Never mind. It's a nifty example of an experiment that's gotten done. Another important issue in the energy arena is maintaining the security of our energy infrastructure. We all know the vulnerabilities that we face on our computers, but as so many more things get automated and IT systems expand to run our refineries and our utilities and our grid network, cybersecurity is becoming extremely important. And this is an area, too, where we've been looking at specifically issues that are unique to the oil and gas industry and utilities. We've also done some work on energy technology policy and strategy. So we have a Center for Science, Technology, and Economic Development, and some of the projects that they've worked on that are related to the energy arena include developing the clean energy strategy for the city of Seattle, taking a look at learning curves and applying that to modeling the future cost and performance of clean coal technologies, and also doing some work for other countries, for example, Saudi Arabia, thinking about an energy technology R&D strategy. They have abundant supplies of petroleum at this point, obviously, but you also want to be thinking about how do you plan for the future? Is that really what you want if you have those revenues, how do you think about investing wisely so that you're prepared for an energy future that might look a little different than the world today? And I thought I'd give another example just to let you know that it's not all about technology development either. Part of what is the challenge in energy, again, is just making sure that we're developing enough skilled workers and students that have the skills to pursue careers in science and technology and engineering and mathematics. So we have a variety of programs in our education area around looking at how you can use technology in the learning process, how you build curriculum around to achieve the results that you want, and then also how do you evaluate and assess that the programs that you're adopting are working. So in thinking about some of the tools that can be applied, the technology tools that can be applied to interest in STEM curriculum, we've got a project now looking at computer games that are designed to teach energy lessons, I guess, and stimulate interest in energy. And then this is an example of a platform that we're building. We're not doing the content for this. Our contribution is really the fundamental work that we've been doing in virtual environments, but creating a virtual environment where people can go and learn about weatherization programs and be taught some training tools that complement things that you get in training programs at real fixed facilities that the DOE also runs. So a lot of times people think about innovation and they think about, oh, that's being creative and coming up with great new ideas, and those are all important pieces of innovation. But at SRI, we like to think about innovation and take it a step beyond. Thinking about innovation as the creation and delivery of new customer value in the marketplace. So having a great idea isn't enough. You've got to do something with it. You've got to make an impact on society for us to feel like it's truly reached the status of innovation. So it's more than just research. It's more than just development and having a prototype that works. It's about all the pieces that go together into having that also be commercialized. And it's not just an easy process, but it's something that our CEO is extremely passionate about and has actually put some thought into outlining our best practices and codifying them into actually what we call 5 disciplines of innovation. And rather than going through all of them, I thought I'd just kind of get you right to the heart of one particular tool that we've found very useful, and it's a part of the everyday life at SRI, which is something called a value proposition. So it emphasizes the idea that, as scientists, it's so easy to get caught here in the approach, having great ideas for new ways to do things, to tinker. But if you want to truly have an innovation that's relevant to society, you've got to be thinking about a need that you can address with that. So we try and give all of these equal level, thinking of the societal need that we're addressing, what our technical approach is, thinking about the benefits and costs associated with that approach, and what the competitive environment is. And then, so starting from there and working through this cycle, and because you rarely get that whole value proposition right the first time, we've done this as a spiral, because you go through and iterate with your colleagues on figuring out how to get a value proposition that's relevant and fundable and workable. And one of the things that this value proposition has really done for us in terms of having an NABC that we're always talking about is helping with alignment and vocabulary, because there's so many people in an organization that are needed to make an innovation work. You need your scientists to conceive, to invent, to perfect, to explain, to actually think of something new. But you also need your IP specialists to help figure out how to protect it. You need your business development staff to go out and help connect it with the market need effectively. You need legal to protect your idea or figure out ways to maybe get corresponding pieces that make your idea complete and marketable. You need, at SRI, we have something called a commercialization board that helps review our technologies and get them ready so that we feel that they're ready, that the companies are prepared and ready to stand alone, to pursue outside funding, to be spun out, and to make new businesses. And then we also need to communicate all of that. So all of these competencies are required for success. So I'll wrap up my discussion. So we've got a little bit of time for some questions and questions. And I guess my main point is, the world has plentiful supplies of energy. It's just that we've chosen not to use a lot of them. And if we want to think about the future and addressing our energy needs, we have a big challenge out there, because there's a huge demand for energy today, and there's a huge growing demand as other economies develop and want a lifestyle that's more comparable to energy-intensive what energy-intensive economies have. But if we want to do that in a way that's environmentally responsible, if we think about replacing that 1 cubic mile of oil that's derived from petroleum today, or the 1.5 miles of oil that's going to be used or regions like China and India approach a level of consumption that's more comparable to what's used in developed economies, we need to be planning now if we want to do something different. Transitions take time. We need a long-term perspective. The incumbent systems, they're huge. They reflect years of investment. And to duplicate that with something new, you have to start with a long time frame in mind. You have to think about market acceptance and cost. You also need to take into account that some resources aren't evenly distributed. So if you want to go to wind, your wind may or may not be located where you need it, may or may not be located near where your distribution system is, and things like that. These are all things that need to be kept in mind as we think about how we're going to address this big challenge. And we need to be a little bit flexible. Not in my backyard, not on planet Earth. It's going to be tough if we aren't able to come up with a way to have a more constructive dialogue to think about what will work and what we will accept as far as an energy future. We need innovation. We have a nice portfolio of technologies today, but as we see, none of them are perfect. We need to keep working at better solutions. We need to come up with things that address the problems that are still out there regarding environmental footprint, regarding sustainability, regarding things that work with our existing infrastructure or for which the infrastructure isn't too difficult to develop. So we're going to have to think about using today's technologies, and we need to look at more technologies. But it's not just a technology problem. We need good policies, we need education, we need a planning process that lasts for 40 years and not 4, that transcends the prevailing price of oil, that allows us to actually think logically about making those infrastructure investments and being able to do it in a way that you can actually see some benefit from making them because you've accounted for the factor of time and in your equation. You need to take into account market forces and human behavior. And I think what people sometimes forget that's really important is that choices that we don't make will get made for us because we are using more energy. And if we don't develop adequate resources for it, we either have to start using less or paying more for it, and neither of those are going to be comfortable. So this challenge creates opportunities, and I just want to make it clear that you guys can make a difference, and we need all of you. We need the scientists, we need the engineers, we need the teachers, we need people that do marketing, we need people with policy, and heck, if you are a poet and can contribute to vision, we need you too. So we'd like to have your help in addressing these problems. I closed this slide with a picture of trees because there's actually this great quote that's been attributed to JFK about this French marshal. He tells his gardener to go out and plant this tree, and the gardener objects. He says, you know, that tree, it takes 100 years. Why should I plant it? And the response was, 100 years? Plant it this afternoon. We need all the time we can have to solve this problem. So get gardening. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Sounds like an exciting place there at SRI, and maybe we should have one here called BRI. Anyway, let's open the floor for questions. Anyone? Okay.
Yes.
I was just curious what kind of advice you might have for graduate students that might be interested in working for SRI after we finish up.
Well, we have a website that actually is very good. You can sort it all different ways. We do route everything through our HR person, but definitely take a look at the website. We have a pretty complete listing of positions there. You'll see a wide range of fields represented, a wide range of locations represented, and it might take a little time, but we will eventually get back to you. So there's definitely programs there. Some programs take summer interns. I'm not again, our HR department would be the ones that would work with Berkeley and on getting that done. Okay. Yes?
On your funding, you didn't show anything about royalties. If you developed this, are you getting royalties off of like Intuitive, you know, when you have a real good success?
Yes, so we do have royalty streams as well. Yeah.
Can you comment on anything you're doing on transportation infrastructure? And then you mentioned energy storage. Mm-hmm. Anything you're doing on electric vehicles or transportation in that arena?
We're not doing as much as I would like to see happening. I mean, clearly clean fuels is an area that we're working on, but I think you're thinking more about other avenues. We do have some battery work, although most of that has been looking at portable batteries. But we do have some concepts, and I think the timing's right to develop them around other energy storage mechanisms as well.
I asked because there's a bunch of grant funding right now in your area that just came out from the Bay Area Air Quality Management District.
Oh, okay.
I think there's $33 million announced yesterday for research related to electric vehicles and clean transportation. So
okay. Well,
I didn't know if you guys were connected to that effort at all.
Yeah. So we don't have a program in that's funded by that group right now that I'm aware of.
Oh, one more.
Does your organization focus on demand-side energy efficiency activities or technologies? Because I saw an emphasis on the supply side. For example,
Right.
the gasoline was auto-centric instead of
Right.
land use planning and mass transit and bicycles. Those are also alternatives to gasoline.
Right.
And going from 20 miles per gallon to 60 miles per gallon, that could save a lot of cubic miles of oil as well.
Yes,
Not
yes.
just power plants.
Yeah. So I think the place where that's going to come in to account, I mean, we are tech heavy, I confess. We're more on that side than, although there's some work on policy as to, how can you think about alternatives to, say, to the car. But another place where I think we're getting involved would be, around the smart grid. There's going to be tremendous change there as, you go from having a person go and read a meter once a month to maybe having a device ping the utility 4 times an hour around loads and consumption patterns and things like that. We do a lot of work around information processing. How do you extract intelligence from that information to make it meaningful to you? How do you make decisions from it? How do you know when to let decisions be made automatically versus when you need a human operator in the loop? So those are areas where I think we can get more involved in some of the demand side issues from that angle, thinking about it more from a demand side management, the questions that are coming up from utilities.
I guess that's all the questions. So thank you very much, Barbara.
Thank you.